Good day everyone, I'm Danica Zhayne VALDEZ from BSBA HRM 24D, and I will continue to how to conduct case analysis, but I will focus on proposing alternative solutions, making recommendations, and tips on oral case presentation. First, we will discuss on how to propose alternative solutions. First is to develop a list of options. After conducting strategic analysis and identifying the problem, we should develop a list of options. First, generate a list of all the options you can think of without prejudging them. Then remember that not all cases call for dramatic decisions or sweeping changes. Some companies just need to make small adjustments. In fact, do nothing may be a reasonable alternative in some cases. Second is to develop alternatives. There are usually several different ways to solve any problem or pursue any opportunity. Jumping immediately from problem definition to a single solution is not a good idea. It limits your options and robs you another chance to consider the advantages and disadvantages of several alternatives. This point illustrates the purpose of developing alternatives, to evaluate what will happen if a company chooses one solution over another. Third is to develop choices and the implications of those choices. One aspect of any business is that it is likely to be highlighted in this part of analysis is strategy implementation. Ask how the choices how is made and how will be implemented. But remember also that no strategy or strategic fix is going to work if it cannot be implemented. Once a list of alternatives is generated, we should ask some questions. First, can the company afford it? How will it affect the bottom line? The budget of the company should be kept in mind in creating solutions. Following a budget or spending plan will also keep you out of debt or help you break out of debt if you're currently in. Imagine you spend a lot of money to certain thing that in the end it doesn't help the company at all. A lot of opportunities will disappear. That's why following a budget plan plays an important role in making solutions. Next, is the solution likely to evoke a competitive response? A competitive advantage distinguishes a company from its competitors. It contributes to the higher prices, more customers, and brand loyalty. Establishing such an advantage is one of the most important goals of any company. In today's world, it is essential for the success of every business. Next, will employees throughout the company accept the changes? What impact will the solution have on morale? Change is constant, and it is an essential component of growth. Typically, when organizations undergo change initiatives, leaders tend to focus on laying out the procedural steps that they must take, but they often ignore the human component of change, which is the steering their team toward the new vision, transforming culture, and encouraging learning and growth and communication. The employees must be addressed beforehand and let them engage in creating solutions if possible. If you lead and engage employees through the change, you are more likely to achieve sustainable success. Otherwise, the company will experience employee turnover. Next, how will the decision affect other stakeholders? Will customers, suppliers, and others buy onto it? Stakeholders, customers, suppliers, and others should also be involved in change. These are internal and external factors that affect business. Stakeholders are the groups and individuals who will be influential in the success of your plans. It is often the skill with you communicate, consult, and involve these people which will determine the success of your change initiative. Customers should also be considered on making decisions. Meeting customer needs while adapting changes is one of the keys to success. In terms of suppliers, they also needed since they are the one who will identify if there are enough resources to supply when change happens. Next question that we should ask is, how does this solution will fit the company's vision, mission, and objectives? Often, companies modify their vision to fit the current environment. The changes internally or externally require a revision in its mission or vision. To identify the misalignments organization, it requires looking around internally as well as externally, talking to people, getting inputs, and finding out whether their core values align with their business philosophies. Next, will the culture or values of the company be changed by the solution? Is it a positive change? An organization's culture or beliefs and behaviors that are influence how people act within the organization is now believed to play a major role in company's success or failure. Changing a culture is a large-scale undertaking that takes carefully strategy and planning. It holds the unique requirement of both starting up from the top and being at an organization-wide process. Changing organizational culture is quite difficult and challenging. So in terms of making change, culture should always be considered. Also, the solution must both solve the problems and should be realistic. And finally, support the solution with solid evidences. What are those solid evidences that we can use? There are three, which are the concepts from class, which are the text readings, discussions, lectures, outside research, and personal experiences or the anecdote. Next, we will discuss on how to make recommendations. First is to describe exactly what needs to be done. Explain why this course of action will solve the problem. Second, the recommendation should also include suggestions for how best to implement the proposed solutions because the recommended actions and their implications for the performance and future of the firm are interrelated. Next, recall the solution you propose. You must solve the problem you identified. This point is cannot be overemphasized. Next, make a logical argument that shows how the problem led to the analysis and the analysis led to the recommendations you are proposing. Remember, an analysis is not an end in itself. It is useful only if it leads to a solution. Next, be persuasive when you write the section so that you can drive your point home. Be sure to bring together a theory and what you have learned throughout your course to support your recommendations. Next, the actions you propose should describe the very next steps that the company needs to take. Don't say, for example, if the company does more market research, then I would recommend the following course of action. Instead, make conducting the research part of your recommendation. Next, or finally, don't make your initial recommendation. If you also want to suggest subsequent actions that may be different depending on the outcome of the research, that's okay, but don't make your initial recommendation conditional on the actions of the company you may take or you may not take. Now that we are done on the case on how to conduct a case analysis, now let's talk about the oral case presentation. First, we should define first is what a oral case presentation is. An oral case presentation is a formal, research-based presentation of your work. Presentations happen in a range of different places. For instance, if you work at a company that assigns people to teams to collaborate on projects, your project team might give an oral case presentations of your progress on a particular project. If you work in a non-profit organizations that host an annual meeting at which the organization shares its activities, budget, and goals with funders and community and members, you might give an oral case presentation also in delivering that information. Now that we know what an oral case presentation is, I will give you 5 tips for preparing an oral case presentation. First tip is to organize your thoughts. You should be familiarized with your material, and if you're working in teams, share your insights within a team. Also, for easier process, you should make an outline of your presentation. Next tip is to emphasize your strategic analysis. In making a presentation, the background or problem statement should only range from 10 to 20% of your presentation. The highlight in here is the strategic analysis or the strategic options that should range from 60 to 75% of your oral case presentations, while the recommendations or action plan should only range from 10 to 20%. Next tip is to be logical and consistent. Present your arguments and explanation in logical sequence or manner. That's why a while ago, I suggested you should make an outline. Next is support your claims with facts. Include financial analysis if possible. The recommended solutions must address the problems you identified. Next tip is to defend your position. Be clear on your assumptions and be able to expand your analysis. Then last tip is to share presentation responsibilities. If working with teams, each member should have a clear role. For example, member number 1 should be the one that will discuss the background or the problem statement. Then the 2 to 3 members that will discuss the strategic analysis. Also, you should coordinate. Yeah, that's what I said. Coordinate with the parts of presentation into logical, smooth, flowing whole. And lastly, team members should work together. You should be united in this type of presentations. I hope that you've learned something from me in proposing alternative solutions, making recommendations, and about the oral case presentation. So, if you're conducting a case analysis sooner or in the next term, good luck and take down notes of these lessons. Thank you for listening!